Is there
A direct correlation between mobile intelligence.
arrival?
I can't prove a correlation there, but I can do it. Welcome to round 9 of the European University Debating Championships. My name is Shiraz Qureshi. My preferred pronoun is he, and with me are
Emily, it's she, they, please.
Stop, don't have preference.
Irina, here.
Great. If we could start by you guys telling me the order in which you're speaking, and if you would like to, your preferred pronouns.
Tomorrow speaker first. Tomorrow speaker second, no preference.
From opening opposition.
Rasmus second.
Great. From closing government.
Lucia speaking first, chief.
Dan second, mate.
Are you okay with time? Do I have permission? Right. If everyone's ready, it gives me great pleasure to call on the Prime Minister to propose the case that stands in their name. Hear, hear.
Dear panel, we both in government think that human lives are the greatest resource there is on this planet and we need to protect it. It's kind of hard to do it if people are currently all the time forced to shoot against each other, right? We think that removing this highly emotional nature from wars, from soldiers, and from militaries is going to bring us more peace. Because at the end of the day, we think that most wars are started because clashes of highly emotional nature. We think that war is extremely emotional phenomenon, and we can reduce it to pure machines that hurt each other but don't feel any emotions. We're going to have a more peaceful world. So briefly, before I move on to my points, a few points about plan or definition, right? So what other things we're talking about? I think we're talking about basically drones, for example, that we have currently, but obviously they would be autonomous and wouldn't need like real-time human guidance. Secondly, we're also talking about like Boston Dynamics type of stuff, you know, robots that might resemble people, all kinds of that stuff. We don't think it really matters. What matters is that these are machines that are willing to go on the battlefield and do the things that humans are currently doing without actually risking human lives. And we think that in generally, government should prefer these things over human soldiers once these things have developed to a decent extent. No, thank you. 3 things in my speech. Firstly, why we're going to achieve a more humane war and why this is an important thing. Secondly, why we can engage in conflicts we currently can't and why this is an important thing. And thirdly, various benefits of removing people from war. No, thank you. Firstly, more humane war, right? We think that the first and most important thing to consider in this debate is we're simply going to save more lives, right? The soldiers aren't going to die. They're not going to be sent on the battlefield at least as much. Second important thing to note is that from a perspective of government X, right? Even if the soldiers, even if the soldiers on the other side might die and might die in a more brutal way, right? We think that the governments have first and foremost duty to protect their own citizens. Before I move on, yeah, sure.
Are they going to be A, controlled by humans or far away, B, independent but run by an algorithm designed by humans, or C, still independent but artificial intelligence?
Okay, we think that obviously some human guidance is going to be required. We don't think you need to have as much guidance, for example, as we currently have with drones. At the same time, we don't think that we should trust like war machinery to an algorithm that is more capable, more powerful than us and that we can't really control, right? This is not the point about autonomy. Second huge benefit from having a more humane war without people is that we're going to have more effective wars, right? These wars are going to be shorter and they're going to give us less casualties, especially civilian casualties. 2 reasons for that, right? Firstly, we think that in many instances we have to deal with symmetric warfare. which means that wars drag out on a very long period of time. Wars are prolonged, and therefore casualties increase. For example, we saw that with the United States fighting against Taliban, they had tons of soldiers, but the problem was that the Taliban soldiers, they had a home field advantage. They were hiding in their mountains, for example. United States soldiers got extremely emotional, scared, and the political support also in home decreased, so they have less soldiers in the end, right? We think this is the thing we're going to change. Robots can fight day and night, and we can end these wars much quicker, which means we don't have to siege, for example, entire cities for months, which means that civilians, first and foremost, are going to suffer less. There is going to be some suffering, of course, but we think it's going to be much better than the status quo.
Yeah.
Secondly, we think that we can largely avoid the point of public support decreasing, right? We think when soldiers die, for example, it's extremely likely that public support decreases. For example, we saw that when the United States intervened in Libya, which we thought would have been a great intervention if they had successfully finished it. The problem was that public support in mainland United States decreased, which meant that basically the country was left in turmoil, there was a huge power vacuum, and more civilians died in the end, right? Secondly, what I'd like to talk about is why we can engage in conflicts that are devastating for civilians, but we currently lack political incentive to deal with, right? We think that one of the best examples of this would be that, for example, if we had some time ago had these weapons, these autonomous robots, we, for example, could have intervened in situations like the Rwandan genocide, right? Because in these instances, people do not want to see their soldiers die, especially for a foreign cause, right? But we think this debate takes place in a global context, and we generally think that preventing genocide is a good thing. However, when you as US citizens, for example, think that your soldiers have no business dying in Africa, it's extremely hard to mobilize public support and to actually risk these lives of these soldiers. We think with this policy, we're firstly going to have more precise weaponry, and secondly, we're going to have more easier to engage weaponry, which means that civilians are less likely to die in these instances. Soldiers are less likely to die in these instances, and we think that the public support from the United States people, for example, is going to be a lot greater, so we can prevent these atrocities, which leads to the fact that we're going to save more lives. Yes.
Wars aren't emotional, wars are political. Part of the reason why no one wanted to intervene in Rwanda was because it directly condemned the racial policies that the colonizers imposed upon them. Please respond to that as well.
We think this might be one factor, but we generally think that people do not like to see their soldiers die, right? If we can move that huge part of a problem, emotional problem, I think it's more likely that we would have intervened in Rwanda. But there are also other examples, also in the future, right, where we could tackle the situation. For example, fighting with ISIS, right? Finally, talking about various benefits of removing people from war, right? We think there are three general benefits. Firstly, as I already mentioned, and I think the most important one, less people are going to die. Secondly, there's going to be less post-war problems, right? We're not going to have soldiers whose lives are devastated after the war. For example, notice the high suicide rates of United States war veterans in the United States. But thirdly, we think that people are going to be less militaristic, and we're going to have less of these emotional and nationalistic conflicts in the end, right? Because if you use regular people and if you train them to always be prepared to attack someone or to defend themselves from someone and to be paranoid, they're always bound to be more nationalistic. They're bound to be afraid of the other side. Notice the fact how Estonian soldiers or conscripts are extremely afraid of Russians, or, for example, Israeli soldiers are afraid of people from Iran, which leads to extremely high tensions because they're afraid, they're paranoid, they want to protect themselves, right? We think we're going to have less of these wars if people have no business with a war, right? And wars are fought with machines. Secondly, we think it's extremely much easier to end conflicts that have dragged out or prolonged for over a very long time because there are no dead soldiers to avenge, right? If your countrymen haven't died in that conflict, it's much more likely that politicians, for example, are going to have an easier time justifying ending that war and taking, for example, a hit in terms of economic downturn. But you don't have actual people you have to avenge, so wars are going to be less emotional. For these reasons, please vote.
Thank you for that speech, and I'd now like to call on the Leader of Opposition to oppose.
Prime Minister stands up and says that the metric through which we should judge the debate is how many human lives are saved, ladies and gentlemen. So very clearly, if we prove to you that through the use of these robots, we get more casualties because these wars are going to be more prolonged, because they're going to commit worse atrocities, because they have no moral code of their own, ladies and gentlemen, and because we're going to engage in more conflicts clearly on their own metric, we win this debate. A couple of points for rebuttal before I get into my points. First, we won't intervene in good interventions, because we won't want to sacrifice our soldiers. No. Wars of this nature are primarily political. Insofar as you provided no reasons how we overcome these political barriers, we don't see why simply this one instance will make us more likely to intervene in Rwanda, at least to a significant degree. Moreover, okay, that's that. Second thing, they say, we get actually shorter wars because these robots are super efficient. Two responses to this. First of all, not necessarily, ladies and gentlemen. We say it is much easier for these countries to continue these wars when they don't have a continual voice from the home front saying, stop killing our soldiers, we need to stop this war. When only robots are suffering on the battlefield, ladies and gentlemen, that is the point where you can continue to kill the other side, which you've been demonizing so thoroughly throughout this war, without the home front actually calling for you to stop this war, ladies and gentlemen. Obviously, we get longer wars because the power that owns these robots doesn't see such a necessity to quickly stop these atrocities, ladies and gentlemen. Okay. They say that on the battlefield, at least, we will lose fewer people. Two things on this. First, no thank you. Recognize that generally, in terms of interventions, which is a predominant form of warfare, likely one of the countries is going to have these mechanical robots, the other one might not, ladies and gentlemen. So on the one side, we slay all the casualties. Moreover, what we say is that the vast majority of these casualties do not accrue on the battlefield itself, ladies and gentlemen, but rather in other instances. We're going to prove to you later why robots cause a lot more collateral damage, why that's awful, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, moving on to my constructive. First of all, lowers threshold for engagement. They have a very conflicting kind of opinion toward this. Is this a good thing? Is this a bad thing? In some instances they think it's good, in some instances they think it's bad. We say predominantly this is a bad thing, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, why is that? Again, as they mentioned, biggest obstacle to engaging is the local population not wanting to give up the lives of their soldiers, ladies and gentlemen. This does not happen to nearly the same extent when we have these robots, ladies and gentlemen. It is much easier for America to convince the population of yet another intervention when they don't have to think about the backlash from the public that our soldiers are dying, ladies and gentlemen. So much more easier. Okay, we give you the example of Vietnam as well, where this be so much more easy to prolong all of these conflicts at the point where they have these mechanical robots, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, also would you say that this detaches us in a very real sense from much of the responsibility going on in the war, ladies and gentlemen. It is not our soldiers committing atrocities, it is not, it is not us to the same degree when we get these robots fighting these wars. It detaches us from responsibility, allows us to stomach a lot more of these atrocities, ladies and gentlemen. So, necessarily, we get more frequent engagement in this violent conflict and prolong these conflicts because we don't have this voice from the home front, ladies and gentlemen. No, thank you. This is especially true, not exclusively, but especially true in the cases where there are not huge geopolitical consequences in engaging these conflicts, right, ladies and gentlemen? So, in wars such as in South Sudan right now, where they don't have to worry too much about this international opinion, ladies and gentlemen, right, that one of the sides definitely needs that prolonged conflict awful. Second point we want to bring to you, how these robots have no morality, why that is a worse thing, and worsens crimes, often wars, that is nothing. We say that the primary reason why wars don't disintegrate into absolute cruelty and massive regular human rights abuse and genocide, ladies and gentlemen, is because in the vast majority of cases, we have some degree of a moral code in terms of how we treat these other sides, in terms of how that happens, ladies and gentlemen. At the point where you have robots who are programmed with one singular aim in mind, usually to kill the enemy, ladies and gentlemen, through whatever means necessary, we say in the vast majority of cases, this leads to a significantly worse outcome actually on the battlefield, ladies and gentlemen. If you program a robot to destroy terrorists, he will not be dissuaded by the fact that there's one terrorist and then a group of 20 other civilians, ladies and gentlemen. He'll not be dissuaded by some obstacles and collateral damage on the way, insofar as his programming compels him to against small laws, to go against the law of these things, ladies and gentlemen, okay? So, what we get is that a lot of the war crimes, a lot of the horrible war crimes are mitigated by the time that people are sometimes afraid of the consequences, what will come to them if they do these terrible, awful things. These robots are not afraid of these consequences, ladies and gentlemen. Insofar as they believe that wiping out the entire population is the most effective means to actually achieving their goal, they will go out and do these things, ladies and gentlemen. Here, in the case where it's primarily soldiers, ladies and gentlemen, they fear the potential conflict. This is what keeps us in check, ladies and gentlemen. This does not keep these robots in check. No, thank you. Okay. My third point I want to bring to you is that how this actually allows oppressive governments, ladies and gentlemen, to remain in power a lot longer than they normally could. So, what we say is that even in very oppressive regimes, the regime leaders need to have the backing of at least the army, ladies and gentlemen, to stay in power, right? They need some sort of level of popular support. They need something in order to justify their legitimacy, ladies and gentlemen. We say that at the point, okay,
both soldiers and these robots will be controlled by humans and governments to some extent, right? So why is it more likely when you're going to have robots you can't program Geneva Convention, for example, into them?
Fully autonomous is literally the wording of the motion. What that means is you have a program you put in beforehand. You cannot anticipate all of the changes, ladies and gentlemen, that happen on the battlefield. You know, at the point where you're giving your mission, kill all terrorists, or kill this particular terrorist, you know, the side effects on the way, you definitely not dissuade them at any point, ladies and gentlemen. You cannot be, that is simply, we don't see that. How is that relevant in this sense? Okay, resuming my point about how oppressive governments can remain in power longer. So, at the point where they require a bit, when these oppressive leaders have the full control, or at least the majority of the control, of an array of autonomous robots, ladies and gentlemen, they don't need to convince, for example, their army, right, to actually go and quell protests, for example, or to commit some kind of atrocities to their own people, ladies and gentlemen. Recognize that it is very difficult for these leaders to go and convince their army, you know, to quell protests. It's not a thing that they want to do. This is not a problem if you have an array of these fully autonomous, deadly robots, ladies and gentlemen. At the point where leaders have at their disposal, it is very easy to see how they could use them with basically relatively small repercussions, you know, to actively oppress their people, ladies and gentlemen. They don't need the buy-in from anyone. They don't need the acceptance of their army. At that point, we get a lot more oppressive regimes. So, what we say, human lives are important. We get much worse than just collateral damage because of this. These robots have no core of morality. They can justify cruelty themselves incredibly easily, ladies and gentlemen. There gives no reason why that's not the case. We see no reason why we now, first we didn't prove to it, and then we still contest is it a good thing that we would not intervene in these supposedly good interventions, for all these reasons opposed.
Thank you very much. And I'd now like to call on the second speaker, side open government, to continue proposing the case.